I was at a point where like, okay, it's, I kept nickel and diming the, a duplex here, a triplex here, a quad here. And I didn't have anything larger than a quad. I had a 5-unit, but I'm like, there's guys doing this at bigger scales than me. And I wanted to get into more of the commercial side of things.
Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. We're looking forward to a great interview today, a great show. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Our promise to you is we will keep this entertaining and educational, and hopefully you'll get that next kind of ambition to continue to take action in your real estate investing career. If you're a regular viewer, follower, listener, thanks so much for all the support. We couldn't do without you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this one because it was actually, I met Jimmy through actually expanding our network and going to events and doing our thing. And it's actually really fitting because this is, by the time this comes out, I would have already gone, but I'm getting ready to head out to Fresno, California to speak at the Deal Champ Summit with Stratton, Jason, and Dean Rogers. It's going to be a really good time, but, guys, like getting out there, going to the events, talking to people, learning what other people are doing is what it's all about. And the same way we bring people on the podcast, you can go do live events. But what the great thing about the podcast is, or watching this video, is you guys get any value out of this, share this, right? I'm going to get up on stage to talk to 1,000 people to share what works for us, and I have nothing to sell. So if you guys get something out of this, please share it. That's the best compliment you can get. And enough about us. Let's just bring in Jimmy and let's talk real estate, man. Jimmy, what's up, brother?
What's going on, guys?
Yeah, man. Excited to have you on. We actually met at, Tim Bratz's event out at his main office in Cleveland. And it was a good time. And me, you, and John Farling all connected really quick. You guys, connected the blue collar aspect, and you guys were Ohio boys. And it was a good time. What drew you to that event? Like what brings you to a coaching group or a mastermind? Like, let's just kick it right off, right?
Yeah. No, that was a great event. That was actually the first mastermind I had ever been to. First time I've ever really paid for an educational event, because I think it was a couple grand. I don't remember exactly, but I paid a couple $100 for a conference here or there, but never that was a big step for me. Looking back, it's like now it's not a big deal, but that was a big deal then. So. What drew me is I was in my real estate investing career then. I still had a W-2 at that time, or had just left, and I wanted to expand, and I knew I didn't know near what I needed to know. I think I was around 30, 35 multifamily doors there, somewhere around there, and I'm like, to get to the next level, I need to get around people that are doing bigger things than me. So that's what drew me in.
Do you feel like in an event like that, because it cost a lot more money than maybe a book or a boot camp or, a home study course, that it motivated you to, hey, this is serious. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this happen. And do you think that dollar figure was a direct correlation to that?
100%. I think the first thing is just getting the mindset and the cojones to take action and write the check or, sign up. But then after, it's like, if you pay for something, you want to, if you pay $10 for something, you don't care if you use it or whatever. But when you're paying a couple thousand, especially for an educational thing, you want to get your value out of it. And I 100% agree with that it probably sparked me to take more action and say, I need to do something with this. This is serious.
Well, but what's crazy is, and I would challenge you, and I know we barely introduced you and what you do and actually do, and we've ended up in this beautiful conversation, but is you already had the mindset, dude. You had 35 multifamily doors in presumably a short period of time. If I had to guess, I don't know the exact amount of years. What mindset things are you searching for going to an event like that? You've already taken the action. You've already had the wherewithal and the kahunas to go and buy stuff. Like what did you feel like you were missing to need to go to something like that?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think so. For me, the way I'm wired, and I wanted to grow more, and I didn't want to. I guess I was at a point where, like, okay, it's I kept nickel and diming the a duplex here, a triplex here, a quad here, and I didn't have anything larger than a quad. I had a 5-unit, but I'm like, there's guys doing this at bigger scales than me. And I wanted to get into more of the commercial side of things, the 5+ units and things like that. And so I always talk now mindset. It's like levels. There's always somebody doing more than you, and there's always somebody that you can kind of help pull up to where you're at. So at that point, I was at that. Yeah, I agree. Compared to most of my friends and certain people, it looked like I was crushing it. And personally, I was at a good spot, but I wanted to grow, and so it took getting around groups of people like that to get to that next level.
Yeah, my number one takeaway from that event actually was kind of what you're alluding to, like 0 to 5 million, 5 to 10, 10 to 20. Replace the numbers with whatever they are.
Yeah,
everything takes a new level. You got to blow up what worked for you, and I don't want to say start over, but you got to get to that next level and realign what you're doing and build new structures or build new pieces, build new banking contacts, whatever it is to get to that next level. And I thought that was my number one takeaway.
And that's hard. That's challenging for a lot of people. And people, I don't think, realize, let's just use single family real estate in general. Like, owning one to a few, 3, 4, 5 houses, you're an owner operator. You don't have a property manager. You're doing repairs. You're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
And be careful, what you wish for, because it's a different level. As soon as you got 50 projects going, you don't even know what houses you're having. You're looking at a spreadsheet all day. You're doing stuff, and that might not be what you want. That might not be what you're an expert on, or why you even got into this business. But that's a kind of a good point, and I think that's a big wake up call. And I think that's also why a lot of real estate investors kind of have, a hockey stick, and then they kind of take a step back before they take a step forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No. That's a good point on the multi-family or the single family. I was like, man, you look at 5 houses, that's 5 different roofs, 5 different, all the mechanicals, all that stuff. You get 1 20-unit, and there's still 5. There might be, 5 or 20 ovens and all that stuff in there, but it's 1 roof, it's or 1 location, and that in itself is a little business versus all these things that are scattered.
So maybe let's start over from when you got into this business and why you got started in this business. What was the first deal that you ever did? I mean, I know you own a good bit of multifamily now. Was it first deal a multifamily, or is it a single family? And kind of how did you get into that related to finding the deal, financing the deal, the renovations? Like, walk us through maybe some of that.
Yeah. So all my first, I don't know, 10 or so were all self-financed, traditional financing through a bank, 20% down or 25% down, bank financing. First deal I ever did was the personal house my wife and I lived in before we had kids. We gutted the whole thing, flipped it. Didn't want to sell it when we started to have kids, so we moved into the next house and kept that one, rented it out, and I just fell into real estate. Prior to that, I was always an entrepreneur. I went to college, went to Ohio State for a little bit, went to Kent Stark, local branch of Kent State, and hated school. Like, did okay in school, just too ADD to be in school, and started an excavating company. I flipped some houses, not knowing anything about like the greater scheme of real estate investing. I was flipping houses for a job, just like, hey, you can make decent money at this. And then got out of that, started a W-2. But then that second house we lived in, we rented that one as well. And then I kind of didn't do anything for a while, just kind of sat on that. And it was nice, a little additional income, but just kind of sat there, worked my W-2, had a decent job. And it was a couple years after that I started getting that bug again, like, hey, there's something to this. Plus I didn't want to work at a W-2 for the rest of my life. I started getting that feeling, kids were getting a little older, and I'm like, I need to find something more here.
Yeah. And that does, like, just to clear it up, like that W-2 is a family business on top of that has its own dynamic, its own headaches, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's my wife's family has a handful of businesses. There's probably 10 or so businesses, really large hardware store, really large kitchen. It's kind of like a country kitchen, traditional style there. And now they're into all kinds of different things. And I ran the countertop division of their company. So good job. Great company to be, like the greater company was a great place to be, but yeah, a lot of dynamics, family dynamics, and expectations. And I just started, it was around COVID, a little before COVID, when all the world got flipped upside down, that I'm like, I started questioning, like, where do I want to be in 5-10 years? Like thinking of, because everything just stopped. So you start thinking a lot about that. And that's when I was like, I want to pursue this a little further.
Do you think kind of being involved in kind of their business helped you in your entrepreneurial journey / kind of gave you that wake up call where if you were working for somebody else that maybe you didn't know, you wouldn't have necessarily seen it because it wasn't firsthand?
Tremendous. So I learned, I worked directly with our CFO, and so just like deep dives into financials, like what I was missing when I was younger, kind of on those little entrepreneurial journeys, was like the business mind of the back end of things. Like I knew how to work with my hands, I knew how to do all that stuff, but I didn't know P&Ls and all the stuff that goes to actually build and sustain a business. So I learned all that while I was at my W-2, and then but also saw, like, there's a lot of people that were just in it to be like, they're going to work there, retire there, and that's great for them. But I got that itch, but then also had all that knowledge. It was more than an education or anything else could have taught me. So yeah, that it was a tremendous a blessing, whatever you want to call it, to be part of that for the time period I was there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's always, especially larger family businesses. We're connected to some people through Dan's family that have really, really large. They're a meat business, best way to say it. But just how, like, the different family dynamics, how they treat kids as employees and bringing them up. But then, like, for even you to have the wherewithal to, like, take that step out, like, was that like a hard conversation, or because of COVID, everything just stopped on a dime? It was a much easier conversation to say, hey, I'm going to protect my family. That's a branch of this whole bigger tier. What did that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It was really hard because there's that expectation. No one's like, it's not like a negative expectation of like, you come in here, you're here for life. Like no one says that or anything like that, but it's kind of just the culture of the expectation, and that you're going to be there, and I was working my way, like I was on executive team there. So it was a tough conversation because there was a lot of good things there. And I had to weigh that, like, hey, I'm leaving stability, benefits, all that stuff, and moving on to this thing. But you touched on it too. I started thinking not just of me and my future, but like, yeah, my kids. And it's because it was going to be that business is going to be way different for my kids than it was for my wife and I's generation, as it was her parents' generation. Because I think we were like the fourth generation that was in there. So yeah, it was tough, but it was ultimately, like, now I haven't looked back. Like I still wish them the best. I still get a lot of stuff that I get from my rentals from that hardware store. It was on good terms. I gave them a long runway, but now it's like just trying to keep going on the real estate side.
I mean, I think that's the perfect situation, to be honest with you, right? Like there was an opportunity to learn, to kind of figure it out yourself. And, it was kind of available, ask questions. Like I like that. And then let's be honest, most successful and ambitious people, like they're not looking for a hand me down or anything
Right.
like that. Like they don't want just, hey, put me in this position. Like they want to create their own thing. They want to learn it their way. They want to do it their way. But like having the resources, and I mean, let's be honest, asking anybody who's more successful than you, is the best resource you can ever have.
Yeah, 100%.
For anything. So I think that's very, very helpful. And, Ian and I talk about this all the time about, hey, how are we trying to set up things for kids and things like that? And every kid's going to want something different than the next, right? And nobody's going to get a freaking hand me out. I don't even know the right term. Hand me down.
Yeah,
whatever. They're not getting that. But at the same time, like, hey, there's a spot for you. Hey, go sell hard money loans, and I'll fund them for you.
But that's the real college education, right? Like, you got to step into an operating business. Like, you tried something else out, and maturity level, whatever you want to call it. Like, we've all been there. Hey, we have a landscaping, excavating business, whatever it is. But like, all we cared about was working, just not working for anyone else, and pray to God that we had got some extra money. Where you stepped into an operating company and said, holy shit, like, if I apply my hand skill set with this other education that I'm getting, I can get to that next level. I mean, I think that's where me and you are the similar. That's the real college education. Let's go out and try it. Let's go do it. I don't want to learn about it in the classroom. Let's go use our hands and go do that.
Right.
I mean, I think most people are like that, as success, entrepreneurs and stuff like that. I think they all have that same trade. But I also think like different people obviously mature at different levels, and being in a space or an atmosphere where it's like, hey, there's a family business, or I'm associated with this business and I see them working hard every day and being passionate about things. A lot of people don't know what their passions are, what to do. Like, a lot of times you're 18 years old, or whenever you graduate high school, or even before that, even if you don't graduate high school, and you're just like, cool, I'm just going to be like, this is my career over here. I'm just going to do what they do because I don't know any better. So, like, I think that's where the real power is being in front of the right people, because most people will say, obviously there's two spectrums. Some people think education is really important. Some people don't think education is all that important. But I think most successful people do get it, where it's like, it's not for everybody, and whatever is best. And, Mark Zuckerberg, didn't need, 14. He, so it's different, and other people, fuck around until they're 30 years old, and then they don't realize what they want to do. And then finally that light bulb goes off. It's like, hey, this is where I want to do it. And they mature, years later. So I think it all really depends on who that individual person is.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a lot of, training stuff while I was there as well. They kind of let me kind of see how I was wired and disc test, all that stuff. I was clearly an entrepreneur, and we weren't starting a lot of new stuff. Like, I had a long leash and a lot of freedom where I was at. I mean, I was essentially running it myself with back end support. But like you were saying, I kind of matured into and kind of realized where I wanted to go with my life at, my mid 30s versus, 25 or 45. And that's when I made the pivot.
Yeah. That, and like you can be put in the right situations, but like, that's a hard thing to just be like, no, I don't want to do this when you're 20 years old. I want to drink. I want to travel. I want to do whatever the heck I want to do. But some people aren't like that. Some people, are, in the middle of high school, and they're like, they're already running a full-time business, and like, that's what they want to do already. And they already identify it. I mean, Ian and I've talked about this. I think, and this isn't obvious, this is very broad, but I think a lot of people that I know, it was kind of in like, in the 20s, they learned, and they were trying to like dabble with stuff, trying to figure out, and like right around 30 or so, it's like, hey, I'm starting to mature. Like, let me try to figure out how we're going to set this up. And then it just grew from there. That's different, obviously, across the board, but that's what Ian and I have seen.
Well, usually 30 is when the women are like, my eggs are dying. We need to have kids now. I'm like, fuck. All right, I guess I got to grow up. So speaking of growing up, so you do a few houses, a couple of flips, single families, you're kind of bouncing around. Like, how did you decide on starting to do duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and then multifamily? Like, what's that journey look like? Your first rental was your personal house.
Yep.
How did we end up buying some duplexes or triplexes, whatever they were?
Yeah. So while I was still there, before I got the itch to leave, I'm like, it's still part of that growing up process. I'm like, well, long term, I want to be, I at the time had 401k and that stuff, but I'm like, I want to be a good steward of my money. I want to make sure I'm getting, good returns. I want to place it, not waste it. Like instead of buying boats and stuff like that, I'm like, so I bought a duplex, bought another duplex over like 5 years. I grew it, to, I don't know, a dozen or so. And then when I left is when I scaled. I bought 2 triplexes that were just on the MLS. And then the neighbor came and he had 2 more triplexes and a duplex and got those deals. I'm like, wow. And then I saw some scale and I'm like, okay, like this isn't just a hobby or some extra cash on the side or just buying a couple places for some depreciation and, just some security in the future. I'm like, I can see this being a business and being something that, basically the launch pad for me to leave. So that's when as soon as I left, I ended up buying a bunch more. And then I was like, wait, this is stupid. Why am I using all my own money? Because I ran out of, so you only can get 10 loans in your own name for traditional financing. So that was my first roadblock. I'm like, well, how do people do this? And then I figured out, it's business, it's commercial financing. And then, just kind of got down that road and rabbit holed. And then finally last year, bought a 20 unit, a 24 unit, closing on a 35 unit here. And then you see the scale really take off when you start doing those kind of deals.
Yeah. And I got a few questions about them before we hop into that, but let's go backwards. Your duplex, triplexes, you're in Northeast Ohio.
Yep.
Just we got a pretty diverse audience here. Let's frame up some pricing. Like, what were you buying them for? What were you doing to them? What was your all-in cost versus your rent? Rough numbers, just so people can kind of get an idea of what you were looking for.
Yeah. So I'll take one of the triplexes I bought for $210, and rents unupdated needed. None of them were the bones were good, all that stuff. The roof's in decent shape, outside's in decent shape, but all the insides hadn't been touched. A lot of what I bought have been long-term. Prior to me were long-term ownership and they didn't really raise rents. So rents were in the, probably average rent was $600. I had people in the fives, $550. And then I had a couple people maybe at $625 or so. And to frame that, average rents here, for a 2-bed, they were all 2-bed, 1-bath. Average rents today are, on an updated unit are $900 or a little more. On a standard unit are probably around $800. So rents were low. So we got in, we didn't do anything right away. And then, we did a bump and after 3-4 months of ownership, we're like, hey, we're going to take everybody up a little bit. And as people started to leave, we'd rehab the units and then get top dollar rent on those.
Yeah. And you were just doing kitchen, bath, flooring, paint, I would assume.
Yep, exactly.
Not bones. So you're tossing $5 to $7 grand, presumably in.
Yep.
So
$3 to $7 grand, depending on what we do and what was needed.
Yeah. And you're doing that yourself or you got crews that do it?
So early on, I did a lot of it myself. Still working myself out of it. And it's not it's more of a
purpose to do something than it is cash. Yeah.
Not necessarily a purpose, just a habit. I got a bad habit of, I can go do that. And then when I'm doing it, I'm like, this is the worst use of my time.
Yeah. Something else blows up. People are calling you like, God, I just wanted to paint the damn house. I want to come here and have my own private time. I get it.
100%. So I have a relationship with a lot of, I got an HVAC guy now, which I didn't really do HVAC stuff. We have a painter. We got my flooring guy. I have, so I just have one, my wife helps out, she does a little bit of everything. And then I have a full-time assistant. And she kind of takes all the calls, organizes a lot of the, subs and things like that. And then, this year I'm looking at hiring project manager / maintenance guy to kind of go check on the things that's not worth calling a plumber or somebody for, but like, hey, somebody needs to get eyes on this to see where we need to go from there. So that's the stuff I'm trying to work myself out of. But coming from, working with my hands, blue collar background, it's hard to, and when I can do it, it's like a double-edged sword, blessing curse, where it's like, I'll just run out there. And then not every time, but a lot of times you end up kicking yourself in your own ass for it. So
how did that process go when you went from, flipping a house, buying a single family rental property to all of a sudden buying a 20-unit building? It's a different business, arguably, it's obviously the transition that I think a lot of real estate investors take of, hey, let's up asset classes. There's only so much time in the day that, why not,
Yep.
Upgrade to a better asset. Like, was that a mental shift first? And then after that, like, what did you tell yourself? Like, hey, like, I can't go and, repair 20 units. Like, it's just it's a different game.
Yeah. So it was for sure a mental shift first. And going to those events, like where I met Ian, everybody I talked to is like, it's the same. If you buy a 20 unit or 100 units, the same effort as buying a quad or a duplex, like as far as, and that's true. I mean, some people would say, well, it's not the exact same. It's not the exact same, but you're dealing with a bank, you're doing all that stuff. And it took me, hearing a bunch of stories of other guys, like, it's not that hard, hearing their stories of going from basically the same place I was in at the time to scaling up. That gave me the confidence. So I'm like, okay, I can do it. Then the numbers are a little scary at first. You're like, oh, okay, I was looking at a $250,000 building. Now I'm looking at a $1.2 million building or a $1.5 million building. So you're like, but the way I broke it down, I'm like, well, it's 20 units. That's like buying, 6 quads or 6 triplexes or 5 quads at one time. And I'm like, well, this makes more sense. And, I just had to work through some of that. And then after you do it, I mean, a couple months goes by and you're like, why was that even scary? Like, I wish that was a 48 unit. and so now it's the same process. I'm in that boat, trying to look at 50 unit, 80 unit, things like that. And it's okay. Now we're looking at, 8 million or 10 million, depending on where it's at. And it's just another mental shift of hitting that next level. It's just more zeros.
Yeah, and more zeros. Some days it feels like less headaches. Other days it feels really good, right? It's all relative. But I think Jason hit the nail on the head that there's only so much time on this earth that we need to be able to optimize and maximize. And I think COVID, forget the BS of COVID, but the fact that the world stopped for a second and allowed people to think what they really want. I think that's the benefits that happen there. It sucks for what we're all dealing with now and what they put us through. However, that pause in life, I think, allowed everybody to think and start to conceptualize, there's more to life than just, work and, I can produce, or maybe I can produce more. I can be a contributing member to society, and I want more for me and my family. I want to control my own destiny, I think is a better way to say the takeaway. What do you foresee yourself doing over the next several years? You're several years into your real estate journey. You're starting to buy some bigger assets. What's your plan over the next 5-10 years? Where do you see yourself down the road?
That's a good question. So I recently just really started thinking about, what do I want? Like, do I want 1,000 units? Do I want, 500 units? Where do I want to be? And I'm definitely not where I want to be yet. So, continuing to grow, especially over the next, 3 to 5 years, continuing to grow the portfolio. I know a lot of people are like, well, if you're in storage, you should just be in storage. If you're in multifamily, just be in multifamily. Right now, I'm buying mostly just local, within 45 minutes of where I'm at. And I'm being opportunistic. So if a deal comes around, I'm gonna check it out. If it's storage, which talking offline before, I just submitted a LOI on a 176 unit storage building. So, because really, when it boils down, real estate's just a math equation, for the most part. I mean, there's stuff that you got to know and learn. But I've always liked storage. I've got a lot of friends in storage. And so, not looking to really shift from there. I know guys are buying businesses and things like that now. I'm not looking that way. I'm looking real estate still, and then continue to grow the portfolio and kind of see, all right, where's what's going to give me that satisfaction of just like staying at 500 units, staying at 1,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, I was going to ask when's enough.
Yeah.
I think that's a question
it's
hard to answer. It's hard to answer. Like what's the number? A lot of people can live on their potential passive income. They have kind of what they might call enough, but is there ever enough? Right? Like things change. Why take your foot off the gas when it's hard to start over. It's hard to do stuff. You already have kind of a built out machine, or after it's kind of built out, it's a lot easier to just throw stuff in there. It's hard to get that build up stage.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. Like I challenge a lot of the viewers to answer that question themselves, like truthfully, and like I think enough is, I think the number is less than a lot of people think than it really needs to be. I think they think it's less. Like, hey, all I need to do is have 20 or 10 single family rentals, and they're each spending out $1,000 a month, and I replace my income. And it's like, I get it, that's a step, but like it's a lot of work to do that. And hey, I didn't. So I don't know. That's a deeper conversation.
Well, I was gonna say the deeper conversation is you probably have enough to quit today, but you need exponentially more to potentially survive later.
Yeah.
And I think if anybody could pull their P&Ls just on their businesses, let alone their personal life, from 2019 till now, during this period of COVID, what your expenses look like, it's eye-opening,
right,
of what things are,
No doubt.
So, Jimmy, one thing we like to ask all of our guests before they go, what is one book or podcast that you think everybody should read, hear, take a listen to?
Man, there's a lot of good ones out there. First, I recommend everybody listen to podcasts. It's the easiest thing you can do is listen to podcasts and read books to get that knowledge. But I would say one that I've read recently that I'm trying to keep reflecting on, because I went through a period of reading a lot of books, and now I'm trying to read less, but like have it like try to apply one or two of the principles from it. The Gap and the Gain. So just looking back, I'm so wired that just looking for that next thing, want to get to where Ian's at, want to get to where these guys are at, and instead of always looking at that moving goalpost, looking back and reflecting, and stuff like this, like talking about, is always a nice refresher of like, look where I came from. Look what, like Jason was saying, it's so hard to build 10 units or 10 properties or whatever it is, it's different for everybody. So just looking back and appreciating where I'm at and not getting, not losing that, trying to be a little more present and enjoy each step of the way and kind of those moments, and not always be looking so far out ahead that I'm missing that. So The Gap and the Gain's a good book that basically hits on all that.
Yeah. And I would say something like you said, listen to as many podcasts as you can, and then you got burned out on some books. Every once in a while, it's good to just listen to just like a normal book, right? We're doing Billionaires Row right now, is really, really good. It's just talking about the New York real estate. It's just like crazy to think.
Yeah.
But it's good to get out. So yeah, Gap and the Gain, we'll get that in the show notes. Jimmy, where's the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn more about you. They want to see what you're doing. They want to get in touch with you. Where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, at Jimmy Domer on both those. I try and put everything I'm doing on there, and that's the best place you can reach me.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on. Guys, if you got any value out of this, Jimmy dropped a ton of bombs. Feel free to share. It's the best compliment we can give him, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.